Hello and welcome to Health Matters on Channels Television. Thanks for staying with us. I am Mary Alale Yusuf. Fever is a normal response to a variety of conditions and is at work when the body's temperature is elevated as a result of the body's thermostat being reset to a higher than usual temperature. Nearly every child will develop a fever at some point. The important thing is for parents to know when to be concerned. Following the WHO recommendation in 2010 that all patients suspected of having malaria fever should be tested before treatment, rapid diagnostic tests are being used more often. This poses a challenge to health workers of managing febrile illness or fevers when the test result is negative for malaria. Dr. Efumbo Dosekun is our guest on Health Matters today. Dr. Dosekun is a consultant pediatrician and the CEO of Outreach Women and Children's Hospital. You're welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Since we're talking about raised body temperatures,
yes,
what is the average normal temperature of the body of a child?
Anything above 37.4 degrees is centigrade is regarded as a fever.
So what is regarded as normal? Is it a range?
Yes, 36.4 and 37.4. That is your normal body temperature.
Okay, so when the body begins to get hot,
yes,
and a child has a fever,
yes,
what is the body saying? Why is this happening? Why is there a reset to the body's thermostat?
Well, a fever is a symptom and a sign of something being wrong. The commonest cause is an infection in the body, but we have rarer causes. If you have burns, you could have a fever. If you have severe trauma, you could have a fever. If you have cancer, you could have a fever. But those are very infrequent causes. The most common cause of a fever, apart from, being oven cooked, that is more, like if a child is locked in a car and get very hot in the car.
That's due to physical causes.
So yes. But the most common cause, and I think parents must focus on what is common, and that's an infection.
Is there any time that, a parent, it's okay for them to just monitor a child's fever, bring it down, and leave it at that? After all, a lot of the drug literature we read says, use this, what do they call those drugs? Paracetamol,
yes,
for a few days. Then if there's no change,
yes,
go see a doctor.
Yes.
Is there still room for that?
I think we should be very careful with using rules and regulations that are used in the developed world, because a child could have a fever in the morning and by the afternoon that child would be moribund. I think parents have to be sensible, and any fever that is high, that is above 38 degrees, you just go straight to the hospital. That is what I would advise in a country like Nigeria, where, number one, we don't have access to healthcare can be a problem. Access in terms of the transportation, there's no ambulance service. If a child suddenly deteriorates, yes. And you may not have enough resources to be able to pay for your drugs, do you get what I mean? And then there could be such a large queue in some children's hospitals in Lagos. In the public sector, you could have like 200 children in a queue, before you see the doctor. So I think we should be a little bit more reactive when we see our children have fever, especially if it's a high fever.
Okay, apart from a fever, does a child come up with other symptoms that show that there might be a problem?
Yes, very frequently we have to understand fevers in children. Fevers in children can be mild. The child is having some mild infection or some gastroenteritis, and the child is jumping, playing around.
That's what we usually see.
Yes, feeding well, and so the panic button might not come on. But if you do have a child that has a fever and has other symptoms, what we call constitutional symptoms, like the child is a bit tired, more lethargic, is not passing urine as frequent, is refusing to feed, the hands are cold, the child is having chills on the bed, the child has a rash on the skin, then I think we should be a little bit, you could put your hands over the chest if you feel the heart rate is beating fast, child is breathing a bit fast, and it's just not itself. Reduce play activity, then we should be worried. And the reason why we should be worried is because of a condition called sepsis.
Okay, let's talk about slightly younger children.
Yes.
Children who can't run about and play.
Yes.
Maybe 0 to 6 months.
Yes.
So he doesn't have much activity to judge him by.
Yes.
What do you look for in such a child? Maybe a child who can talk.
I would say any baby that has a temperature above 38, you should not walk, you should run. You should
to the
hurry
hospital.
and go to the hospital.
But that brings me to this next point. How does a mother know, a father know, the temperature of a child? Are they to now have thermometers in the house?
I think it's very important. I think with the level of awareness that's, at least in Nigeria, I think it's quite important for every parent to have a thermometer which they could measure.
Okay, now
the child's temperature.
I've seen several types of thermometers. Yeah. There's glass thermometers, some that have some mercury in them. Then there are some that just have numbers, like they're automatic thermometers.
The digital, that's called the digital thermometer.
Then they have different ways of taking temperatures. In the mouth, in the ear, in the anus, under the armpit, in the armpit rather. What do you advise a parent to do? How do they take the child's temperature?
I think the simplest way is
or
the
is it the same thing?
way. No, it's not the same thing. And because internal temperatures are normally even a bit higher. So, I mean, if we could do it that way, but it's just that with a lot of research, they've shown that if you don't know how to do it properly, it can actually damage the rectal lining.
Okay.
So people just recommend doing auxiliary one. There's a forehead one, but it's more expensive. So I think it's just sensible for each parent to put it in the bathroom in a little plastic, your digital thermometer. And if you see your child a bit withdrawn, child not playing, children are really quite, beautiful, the way they express fever. Most of the time there will be a little change. And then the parents will take the temperature, and if it's above 37.4, depending on if there are other associated symptoms, you could start panicking. If it's, if it's less than 38, you could give some fever-reducing drugs, which another school of thought says we shouldn't bother doing that because that can actually suppress. Because fever is actually the body's way of, it's raising the temperature to be able to kill the pathogen, whether it's a parasite, virus,
there's a lot of,
or bacteria.
There's a lot of advice, that parents get, that they should tepid sponge the child.
Yes.
Give him use a sponge and wet the body or dampen the skin so that there will be evaporation and all that. If indeed the raising of the temperature protects the child, why reduce it?
Yes. I think the reason we try to reduce the fever is, number one, it can be quite uncomfortable if you have a high temperature. And it's actually more for the comfort of the child that
not
you do.
Really to get rid of whatever is troubling the child.
It's more
just
for
to
the
make
comfort.
him feel better.
But saying that, in some conditions where children, when they have a high temperature, they have seizures, which is called febrile convulsions, you might have to be a bit more aggressive or use different methods to bring the temperature down so the child doesn't have a fit. And it's said that 1 in 10 children have the tendency to have a convulsion. So I think it's just being sensible, when a child has a fever, take very light clothing, give plenty of drinks. The child is uncomfortable, we give some paracetamol. But I think this sit at home and wait theory, I personally feel in this environment where we don't have a good ambulance transport system, there are problems, there may be problems accessing good health care if there's a deterioration. Prevention may be better than cure. So I think people should go to the hospital, be seen by a health practitioner, have a blood test done to sort of determine what is the cause of the fever. Because in our environment, malaria plays a very important part. So it's important to have a test to know, is it malaria, or is it
something else?
A viral illness, or is it a bacterial illness?
Okay, so maybe a mother takes her child to the hospital and a malaria test is done, I'm aware that malaria tests are really quick.
Yes.
They can tell you in a flash, this isn't malaria. But when they want to check for something else, maybe bacterial or viral, it takes about a whole day.
Yes.
What do they do in between? Yes. Assuming this is going to be a serious issue.
Yes. And that is why we mustn't only be led by tests. We must be led by the child. Because there are some tests you do. You could do like a white blood cell count test to see if the cells that come out when you have a bacterial infection is there. And sometimes these cells just don't rise up. And then, so you can't just use one test. It's like what they say, a constellation. That's a gathering. It's like a detective is seeing this child with a fever. And in the mind of the healthcare practitioner who is acting as a detective, what he must be saying, is this a mild fever that is self-limited, that I'll just say, go home, give the child plenty of fluids and it'll settle? Is it a localized infection, one in which is just set in one organ,
like the tonsils?
And just like the tonsils, or an ear infection in which you could also send them home or give them some oral antibiotics or oral malaria, depending on what the condition is? Or is this sepsis? Sepsis is a transformation of a localized source of infection. It's transformed in the body and now not only attacks the bug, that is either malaria or bacteria or virus, it also attacks the body's system.
Okay, hold on a bit. You said the sepsis attacks the body system.
Yes.
But it's also attacking the bug.
Yes.
So what's happening here?
It's an overdrive. It's an overdrive. It's like if there's war and there's a bomb, and the bomb kills the enemy, but it also attacks the civilians.
But why would that happen? Why?
It's like a transformation. It's dependent on so many factors. It can be dependent on the power of that bug, like Ebola. Ebola led to death very quickly because it led to a severe sepsis reaction. So there was a massive overdrive that affected every single system, leading to what they call...
So this sepsis, is it caused by bacteria, viruses, or protozoa, or everything?
Everything. It's just an abnormal immunological reaction. Normally when you have a localized infection, the body attacks it. But this same body has what you call a counter-regulatory. So as the body is going wild, there's something that's damping down the wildness, and it's contained in an organ. But sepsis is when it has spread through the blood and the whole body is on fire.
Okay, so let me just halt you there. Yes. We'll come back and continue from there.
Thank you.
We are going to take a short break now. Make sure you stay for part 2.